My name is Elchin Mammadov from Azerbaijani Cultural Society of Northern California. As we know, today is the 33rd anniversary of Khojaly tragedy that took place in the First Karabakh War in 1992, 26th of February. So we are hosting Rusif Huseynov, Foreign Affairs Specialist, Director of Topchubashov Center. It's think tank organization in Baku. Hi, Rusif.
Hello, Elchin.
Welcome. Good morning there. It is late night here in California. So we're gonna. If you wanna say a couple of things about about yourself and the organization that you direct.
First of all, thanks for having me for this interview, and thanks for raising this topic, which would definitely help for awareness raising internationally, especially. I represent Topchubashov Center, a Baku-based think tank. We mostly cover geopolitical developments in South Caucasus and the neighboring regions, which would include and are not limited to Central Asia, Middle East, Eastern Europe. We are also dealing very, very intensively with the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, the history, the contemporary situation, and a little bit of the future development.
Good. Myself, I was reading. I have been reading news from Armenian side, Azerbaijan side. Sometimes trying to be objective on the events that happens. So speaking of the conflict, Azerbaijani-Armenian conflict, one of the hottest moment of the conflict was Khojaly tragedy. Happened in 1992, February 26, 33 years ago. So what is Khojaly? What place does it hold in the history of Azerbaijan? Khojaly became the site of one of the most tragic events in Azerbaijani modern history. Hundreds of Azerbaijani civilians, including women and children, were brutally killed and many were taken captive. This event remains deeply embedded in the nation's memory. Can you explain what happened in Khojaly and its significance in Azerbaijani history?
Well, thanks for the question, Elchin. Khojaly used to be a small, quiet town in Karabakh, Azerbaijan. However, and unfortunately, it is mostly known for and holds deep historical and emotional significance due to a tragic event which took place there in the early 1990s. During the First Karabakh War between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Armenian forces attacked Khojaly, which was strategically located near the only airport in the region. The town, inhabited by the ethnic Azerbaijanis, was heavily shelled, and when the civilians attempted to flee, they were ambushed and massacred by the advancing Armenian troops. Azerbaijani sources claim that at least 613 civilians were killed, including 70 elderly people, 106 women, and 63 children. Many others were taken hostage, tortured, and went missing. The massacre is considered the largest single atrocity during the First Karabakh War, and unluckily it happened against Azerbaijani civilians. It traumatized the entire society here in Azerbaijan, who was not ready for such a large-scale killing. It shaped also the consequent course of the war, as it sped up the occupation of the Azerbaijan-inhabited provinces one by one by the Armenian forces, of course. Having learned the lesson by the Khojaly massacre, the civilians in other Karabakh provinces would escape the advancing Armenian soldiers in order not to undergo the same experience. To summarize, Khojaly is not only a town in Azerbaijan, but it is a synonymous word for tragedy, atrocity, and massacre.
Thank you very much for a detailed answer. So, so coming to the second question, how did Khojaly tragedy shape Azerbaijani identity? We know all the nations, they have identity behind it, and the identity had been shaped under pressure, under various type of events, historical events. So national tragedies often become defining moments for countries' collective identity. For Azerbaijan, Khojaly is not just a historical event, but as you mentioned before, it's a symbol of suffering. Yeah. How has the Khojaly tragedy shaped Azerbaijan identity?
This is an interesting question, and indeed, many identity scholars would also confirm what you just said. Identities, usually uh, ethnic, religious, gender, etc., they are formed and they are usually strengthened in the face of a danger or in the face of usually negative episodes. In our case, the Khojaly tragedy has profoundly shaped the Azerbaijani national identity, becoming one of the central symbols, if not the very, very first and central symbol of suffering, resilience, and demand for justice. And you can find the similar experiences in other ethnic groups and nations' histories. For the Bosniaks, it's Srebrenica, which also took place in the mid-90s. We can assess Khojaly through the prism of several dimensions. It is a symbol, first of all, of collective trauma. The massacre was the darkest chapter, along with another event, which we usually refer to as the Black January in 1990, as the darkest chapter of Azerbaijan's contemporary history. It shaped how the Azerbaijanis view the conflict against Armenia, how the Azerbaijanis viewed themselves, their state, their nationhood, and their enemies. Khojaly represents not only a military defeat, but also a national tragedy. It also reinforces a collective sense of victimhood. And as I already said earlier, out of 613 civilians who were massacred during that tragic event, there were dozens of children and also elderly and women. And it is also embedded in national mourning rituals, literature, and political discourse. At the same time, it helped to solidify Azerbaijan's national identity. The entire war in Karabakh actually created the Azerbaijani nation, let's put it this way, because we didn't have a solid, very strong identity as a people prior to the First Karabakh War, but the entire military conflict was kind of a rally around the flag for our society. It is also a rallying point for patriotism, unity, and resilience, especially in the face of territorial dispute. And the phrase "justice for Khojaly" is widely used in Azerbaijani political discourse. And at some point, like 10 or 15 years ago, it went beyond Azerbaijan. It was also promoted internationally in order to somehow raise awareness about Azerbaijan's sufferings. And I have to also admit that the tragedy in Khojaly also shaped our views of the Armenians, our hostility towards Armenians, and it has fueled long-standing distrust and hostility and enmity towards the Armenian society. Because, of course, you may wage a war against your neighbor. Many other countries or other societies have undergone this, but if you face such a large-scale killing of civilians, then your whole view about the adversary changes. One last thing, and then I'll stop there because we can speak about this very topic for hours. The memory of Khojaly makes the Armenia-Azerbaijan reconciliation very, very hard, unless and until the Armenian side assume the responsibility and make proper apology for this.
We gotta come back to that topic where how Khojaly events impact the Azerbaijani-Armenian reconciliation. But speaking of the fairness behind it, justice behind it, as you mentioned, we have to ask, why has there been no international legal recognition or tribunal for Khojaly massacre despite evidence of war crime? So who was the what was the specific goal of the group of people, entity behind this massacre? Is there a specific goal? And then, as we know, that for those, the Khojaly massacre, resulted in deaths of hundreds of Azerbaijani civilians, despite evidence of war crimes. No international tribunal has been established to hold those responsible or accountable. Can you explain why there has been no international legal action regarding the Khojaly massacre?
Yes, a very interesting set of questions. When it comes to First Karabakh War, we usually refer to the other side as the Armenians or Armenian side because indeed it was a bunch of different actors. It was the Republic of Armenia. It was the Karabakh-based warlords and local militia, and there were also paramilitary organizations consisting of volunteers, and they also came from Armenia. So it's really hard to define who was in charge of the operations conducted by the Armenian side. Therefore, we would refer to them as the Armenian side collectively. Every year on February 26, Azerbaijan hosts memorial events. As I said earlier, we have this slogan, this phrase, justice for Khojaly. It's part of our political discourse and also part of our international diplomacy. Unfortunately, there's little awareness internationally, as the international community chose to ignore the massacre back in 1992 and has paid little or almost no attention ever since. This is why the Azerbaijani state and various institutions had to actively lobby for the recognition of Khojaly, for the Khojaly case as a massacre and as a crime against humanity. A little bit of personal history, a personal story. I met some 10 years ago an Indonesian girl in Istanbul, Turkey, and we were part of an international event. And when the participants of the event made a round of introduction, she said she was the Indonesia coordinator for the Justice for Khojaly campaign. Can you imagine how the Azerbaijani agencies were trying to promote this issue by also using local coordinators, local institutions? Now back to your question. I'm not a lawyer, but I will still try to give my somewhat understanding of the situation. Why about the international assessment of the Khojaly massacre. Azerbaijan considers the what happened in Khojaly as an act of genocide and ethnic cleansing against its citizens. And by the way, several countries and several states in the United States have also recognized this tragedy as a crime against humanity. But why don't we have international legal evaluation for this. There could be several reasons, some geopolitical and legal practice, unlikely events, other events such as the Rwandan genocide or Bosnia, for which special international legal bodies were established. No special tribunal was ever created for the Karabakh conflict in general, including the Khojaly episode. The International Criminal Court was established in 2002 and thus does not consider the cases prior to the year of its creation. Neither Armenia nor Azerbaijan were part of the Rome Statute, the ICC's founding treaty at the time, which is limiting their legal options. And there can also be a lot of geopolitical factors because neither Russia nor some Western countries where, by the way, strong Armenian diaspora and lobbying organizations function, has ever showed enthusiasm to evaluate the Khojaly massacre in a legal way. And this leads us to what many policymakers and experts in Azerbaijan call double standards, because international law or international system usually cherry picks as different cases. So this could be my understanding of this situation.
Thank you for the detailed insight. My next question, which you touched at previous answer a little bit, it's about how does the denial of Khojaly massacre impact Armenia-Azerbaijan relations and prospects for reconciliation? And Khojaly massacre remain a deeply sensitive issue in Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, as we know, while Azerbaijan consider it as war crime and demands justice. Armenia has largely denied responsibility. How does this denial of the Khojaly massacre affect Azerbaijani-Armenian relations and the possibility of long-term peace? Not like also on top of intergovernmental relations, but also as a societies. If you can answer the two different.
Yes. Well, thank you, Elchin. The denial of the Khojaly massacres significantly impacts the Armenian-Azerbaijan reconciliation process because, as you may know, now the governments in both capitals are negotiating a peace deal. This can be signed at some point, but if we speak about the societal reconciliation, long-term reconciliation, and peace, any denial of the Khojaly massacre by the Armenian side would definitely complicate this, because for us it's a symbol of Armenian aggression and war crimes. But at the same time, for the Armenian side, acknowledging responsibility would mean admitting to war crimes, and which could have huge legal and political consequences within the Armenian society. But we can definitely refer to what one Serge Sarkisian said of the Khojaly massacre. Let me remind that in the 1990s, he was one of the warlords, Armenian warlords, who fought against Azerbaijan and was instrumental in ethnic cleansing. And he later went to Yerevan to eventually become the president of the Republic of Armenia. He said to an English journalist, quote unquote, before Khojaly, Azerbaijanis thought that they were joking with us. They thought that the Armenians were people who could not raise their hand against the civilian population. We needed to stop that, and we could break that stereotype. If they really want to somehow contribute to the long-term conciliation with the Azerbaijani side, this would definitely also somehow soften the position of those Azerbaijanis, those hardliners in Azerbaijan who are against any type of peace and rapprochement with the Armenian society.
Thank you very much. You gave example Serge Sargsyan's quotes. Also, I didn't read entirely, but Monte Melkonyan's brother, Markar Melkonyan, he has a book called, I believe, My Brother's Road or Way. So the page between 200 and 220, he describes the Khojaly and Karadağlı events, like step by step, how those the hunters hunted those poor people one by one. Okay. Thank you very much. My last question will be just general. How do you see the future of Azerbaijani-Armenian relations? Do you think that the peace will be signed this year or next year? How far we are close or far from peace? We miss peace. It's time.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that we already have de facto peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan without any formal treaty. There is no shooting across the border. This is already a huge achievement. As for the peace deal negotiations, if I'm not mistaken, 15 out of 17 items have already been agreed upon. Two, and as some of the policymakers in Azerbaijan refer, 1.5 items are yet to be agreed upon. I don't know. I can't give you any time frameworks. It can be signed this year or next year, or it may not even be signed at all. However, with this growing uncertainty in the international system, especially under Trump's administration, which is really destroying the world order which we used to know. I think both Armenia and Azerbaijan should secure themselves from external factors which can destabilize our region and sign this peace treaty sometime very soon.
Hopefully, we are hungry for peace. We hope for the best peace possible. Signing the peace treaty doesn't mean that ending the conflict, right? You can sign 100 papers, but if there's a tension,
Exactly.
it's no real peace. So let's hope not only the Baku and Yerevan governments shake hands, but also as a society, we will shake each other's hand and then move forward. Thank you. Our guest was Rusif Huseynov. He is a researcher, director of Topchubashov Center. He's a foreign affairs specialist. The Topchubashov Center is a think tank organization in Baku. Thank you so much, Rusif.
Thank you for this initiative. It was a pleasure.
Our pleasure.